In my family, the worst truths always surface during Sunday lunch. It's like a ritual. The porcelain was gleaming, the pot roast was perfectly cooked. My mother, Eleanor, was polishing a water glass that was already spotless. My father, Richard, was carving the meat with surgical precision. I waited for a lull, my hands clenched together in my lap, trying to still the tremors by pressing my knuckles white. The shaking had been getting worse all week. "Dad," I said, my voice barely a whisper. I cleared my throat and tried again, aiming for casual. "Did you manage to get my prescription on Friday?" The pharmacy text said it was signed for, but I didn't see it in the house. My father didn't lift his eyes from the roast. He speared a slice of meat, chewed it thoughtfully, and then swallowed. "We didn't get it, Naomi," he said. His tone was so nonchalant, like he was telling me he'd forgotten to pick up dry cleaning. That money went towards Chloe's new camera. She needs a professional grade one for her photography major. It's for her future. The air in the room seemed to crystallize. Everything just stopped. Across the table, my younger sister, Chloe, was glued to her phone, a smug little smile on her face. She was probably already posting about her new toy, her perfectly manicured nails tapping a rhythm of indifference on the screen. She didn't look up, not once. She couldn't have cared less. A frigid wave washed over me, and my heart began to pound against my ribs like a trapped bird. "Dad," I breathed, the word getting stuck in my throat. "That medicine costs $2,800. I'm guessing you didn't read the warning label the pharmacist sent you." My mother's hands froze mid-polish. My father finally set down his carving fork. For the first time, I saw them not as just selfish, but as something far more terrifying. They were dangerous. Before we get into what happened next, do me a favor and hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from. I'd love to know. My father, Richard Vance, reached for his wine glass. He held it by its delicate stem, swirling the deep red liquid, watching it cling to the sides. He looked utterly bored, like a man waiting for a tedious meeting to end. He did not look like a father who had just confessed to using his daughter's health as a down payment on a gadget. "Don't be so dramatic, Naomi," he sighed, taking a sip of wine. "It's just medication. You can get it next month. Or the month after. We have significant expenses, you know that." "Just medication," I repeated, my own voice sounding alien and distant. "Dad, this isn't a bottle of multivitamins. It's not for a mild headache. It's what stops my own immune system from shredding my nerves. You were there. The specialist explained it to you 2 years ago. If I miss my dose, I lose fine motor control in my hands first, then my legs, then eventually my ability to swallow." I turned my pleading eyes to my mother, Eleanor Vance. She was a woman who prized beauty above all else. She wore her pearls even to sit at home, and her days were spent tending to her prize-winning hydrangeas. Her entire purpose in this family was to make things look perfect. "Mom," I begged, hating the weakness in my voice, but I was desperate. "Please, make him understand." My mother's gaze drifted to the floral centerpiece. She reached out and ever so gently adjusted a rose petal, as if it were the most pressing matter in the world. She wouldn't look at me. "Your father knows best, Naomi," she said, her voice a soft, practiced murmur. "The market is difficult right now. We all have to make sacrifices." She finally glanced at me. "Chloe needed that camera for her portfolio. You want your sister to excel, don't you?" "Sacrifices," I said, the word a blade twisting in my chest. "You're asking me to sacrifice my ability to walk so Chloe can take artsy photos of sunsets? Oh, for God's sake, would you stop being so jealous?" The sharp voice came from across the table. It was Chloe. She'd finally graced us with her attention, looking up from her phone. It wasn't the new camera, but it was still a sleek, expensive device. At 20, she was the family's shining star, with our mother's fair hair and our father's cool blue eyes. I, with my dark hair and brown eyes, had always felt like an ink blot on Tamanda's pristine family portrait. Chloe rolled her eyes. "You always have to make everything about you, Naomi." "Oh, I'm sick. Pity me." "It's so exhausting. Dad said he'll get your pills later." "Why do you have to ruin a perfectly good Sunday?" She held up her phone, framing a shot of her plate. "The portrait mode on this thing is incredible," she announced to the room. "The bokeh effect is just chef's kiss." My father beamed at her. It was a radiant, authentic smile, the kind he hadn't aimed at me since I was a little girl. "I'm glad you love it, sweetheart," he said. "We want you to have all the best tools for your career." The walls of the dining room suddenly felt like they were closing in. They were painted a tasteful, expensive shade of beige, adorned with gilt-framed landscape paintings. The curtains were thick, heavy velvet. It was a room meticulously designed to scream, "We are a successful, happy family." It was all a lie. I glanced down at my lap. The tremor in my hands had graduated from a flutter to a full-blown shudder. It was a low-voltage current humming under my skin, tightening my muscles. If I tried to lift my fork now, I'd send it clattering against the china, and my father would just sigh and call me clumsy. I dug my nails into my palms, the sharp sting of pain a focusing agent. "I can't wait a month," I said, trying to force steel into my voice, but it quivered. "I have 2 days' worth of pills left. After that, withdrawal begins. The seizures can start within 48 hours of the last dose. The pharmacist sent you a warning letter, Dad, a registered letter. Did you just throw it away?" Richard calmly sliced another piece of pot roast. He ate it, chewed, and swallowed. "You're exaggerating," he said flatly. "You always had a flair for melodrama, Naomi. Remember when you were 9 and you fell out of that tree? You screamed like you'd been mortally wounded. It was just a few scrapes. I dislocated my shoulder, Dad," I shot back. "I was in a sling for a month. Details, details." He waved his fork dismissively. "The point is, you overreact. You're panicking now. You look perfectly fine. I am not fine." I slammed my open palm on the table. The bang was deafening. The silverware jumped. My mother let out a small gasp, her hand flying to her pearl necklace. "Naomi, your manners. Look at my hand," I shouted, holding my right hand up for them to see. I let all the tension go, and it spasmed violently. This wasn't a tremble, it was a convulsion. My fingers jerked back and forth, completely beyond my control. I tried to make a fist, but my muscles refused the command. "Look at it," I screamed. "Does this look fine to you?" Chloe recoiled with a grimace of pure disgust. "Ugh, Naomi, stop. You're just doing that on purpose to guilt-trip us." "I can't stop it," I yelled, hot, furious tears finally burning my eyes. "This is what happens when I don't have my medicine. It gets worse every single hour. By tomorrow, I won't be able to type. By Tuesday, I won't be able to drive. By Wednesday, I could be in a hospital bed." My father finally truly looked at my convulsing hand. He stared at my twitching fingers, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Was it fear? Remorse? No, it was irritation. He looked at my hand the way one looks at a wine stain on a white carpet. He looked at it like it was an ugly inconvenience ruining his meal. "Put your hand down," he said, his voice laced with ice. "You are making a scene." "There's nobody here but us," I cried. "Who am I making a scene for? The ancestors in the paintings?" "You are upsetting your mother," Richard said, pointing his steak knife at me like a weapon. "Stop it, now." I let my hand fall back into my lap, the fight draining out of me. I felt hollowed out. I looked at them, really absorbed the scene. My mother was now intently pushing a stray carrot around her plate, pretending she was in another dimension. That was her signature move. If she didn't acknowledge it, it wasn't real. Chloe was already back to editing her photo, adjusting the saturation, completely unconcerned. She had her parents' adoration. She was safe. And my father, Richard Vance, the man who once taught me how to ride a bike, was calmly finishing his lunch. He had run the numbers. He had seen the choice, my medication or Chloe's camera. He chose the camera. He didn't choose it because he misunderstood the risk. He chose it because he loved Chloe more than me, and he chose it because my pain was an acceptable price to pay. That realization was a punch to the gut, far more painful than the disease itself. This wasn't just neglect, it was a verdict. You are not important. I sat there in the ringing silence for a few more minutes. The only sounds were the tick-tock of the grandfather clock in the hall and the tap-tap-tap of Chloe's nails on her phone. It felt like I was waking from a long, suffocating dream. For years, I had made excuses for them. Dad's just under a lot of pressure. Mom's just anxious. Chloe's just the baby of the family. I was the reliable one. The one who remembered their appointments, who filed their taxes, who drove them to the airport. The boring, useful one. But I guess you don't waste hay on the workhorse when you want to buy a new saddle for the show pony. You just let the workhorse starve. My gaze fell to the pot roast on my plate. It was cold now, a film of congealed fat forming on the gravy. My stomach churned. I didn't have a family. I had people who shared my genetic code. A family is supposed to be your fortress. They don't gamble with your life. My hand was still shaking under the table, a dull thud, thud, thud against my leg. I took a slow, deep breath. If I stayed in this room a second longer, I would either start screaming until my throat was raw, or I would start crying. I refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing my tears. I shoved my chair back, the legs screeching against the polished hardwood floor. The sound was violent. My mother flinched. Naomi? I ignored her. I stood, my knees feeling unsteady. The stress was accelerating the symptoms. I had to brace myself on the edge of the table. "Excuse me," I said, my voice eerily quiet and flat. "We haven't had dessert," my mother said, her voice laced with anxiety. "I made your favorite, the apple crumble." "I'm not hungry," I said. "Sit down, Naomi," my father ordered, not even looking up. "We finish our meals together in this family." "No," I said. He looked up then, his blue eyes narrowing. "What did you just say to me?" "I said no," I repeated, meeting his gaze directly. "I'm finished." I turned and walked toward the dining room door. My legs felt like lead, as if I were wading through concrete. Each step was a monumental effort, but I didn't stop. "Naomi," my father's voice boomed. "Get back here." I kept walking. Out of the dining room, into the hall. The wall was a gallery of their happiness. A family portrait from a ski trip, Chloe in the center, laughing, while I stood off to the side holding everyone's jackets. I walked right past it. I reached the imposing front door, a heavy slab of mahogany with a brass handle. It had always felt like the gate to a prison. Behind me, I heard a chair scrape and the urgent click-clack of heels on the floor. "Naomi, wait!" It was my mother. She caught up to me, her face flushed, her eyes darting back toward the dining room, terrified Richard might follow. "Where do you think you're going?" she hissed. "You can't just walk out. Your father is livid." I looked at her pearls and her perfectly pressed silk blouse. I felt a fleeting pang of pity. She was a woman trapped in a cage of her own making, terrified of its keeper. But the pity evaporated when I remembered her silence. She heard him choose a camera over my life, and she said nothing. I'm going to get my medication, I said. But we don't have the money right now, she stammered. I told you, the investments are tied up. Things are tight. Can't you just ask the doctor for some samples? They don't give out samples of this, Mom, I said, my voice cold. It's a highly controlled medication. And I don't care if things are tight. I have my own money. She looked genuinely surprised. Your savings? But Naomi, you've been putting that aside for a down payment on a condo. You've been saving for years. I know, I said, but I can't sign a mortgage if I'm in a wheelchair. Don't say such things, she whispered, aghast. You're not going to end up in a wheelchair. I might, I said, or I could just die. Would that be better? Would that disrupt the family's aesthetic less? She flinched. That's a cruel thing to say. No, Mom, I said. Cruel is watching your child's hands shake and telling her she has bad table manners. I pulled the heavy door open. The afternoon sun was bright and warm. The world outside was beautiful, and it felt like a betrayal. Naomi, she said, her hand fluttering to my arm. Please, just come back inside. Apologize to Richard, we can figure this out. I'm not making a scene, Mom, I said, gently removing her hand. I'm saving my life. I stepped onto the porch and pulled the door shut. Not a slam, just a firm, final click of the latch. I walked to my car, a 12-year-old sedan with a dented fender. Chloe, of course, drove a brand new SUV. I got in, the heat of the interior clinging to me. I took a shaky breath. Stress was a major trigger for my condition. The more agitated I became, the more my body rebelled, and I was rebelling hard. I put the key in the ignition, my hand jittering against the steering column. Clink, clink. I missed the slot twice. Come on, Naomi, I muttered. Get a grip. I used my left hand to steady my right wrist, guiding the key home. The engine turned over. As I reversed out of the long paved driveway, I saw a flicker of movement in the dining room window. My mother, watching me leave. I didn't wave. The drive to the pharmacy was a 10-mile ordeal that felt like 1,000. My right foot, the one I needed for the gas pedal, had started to twitch. I had to pour all my concentration into maintaining steady pressure. I stayed in the far right lane, gripping the wheel until my knuckles were bone white. Just get there, I chanted internally. Just get the pills. I thought about the money, $2,800. It was almost every penny I had in my savings account. I worked as a freelance technical writer. The pay was decent, but I lived frugally. I scraped that money together by skipping vacations, wearing old clothes, and driving this beater of a car. I was saving to finally, properly escape them. Now, it was all about to vanish. A single hot tear traced a path down my cheek. It wasn't fair. It just wasn't. My father drove a luxury German car. My mother wore designer clothes. My sister was getting a camera that cost more than my rent. And I was about to go bankrupt just to keep my body from falling apart. I pulled into the pharmacy parking lot and killed the engine. I just sat there for a minute, my entire body humming with tremors. I walked inside. The fluorescent lights were too bright, the air conditioning too cold. I went to the pharmacy counter at the back. Mr. Gable, the pharmacist, was a kind, older man who knew me by name. He looked up as I approached, and his kind face immediately fell. He saw my hands, resting on the counter, twitching. Miss Vance, he said, his voice soft with concern. I was worried when your father didn't come by on Friday. I know, I said. I'm sorry about that. I called the house, he continued gently. I spoke with him. I explained the urgency, that with this medication missing even a couple of days can be dangerous. I know, I said again, my voice thin. He forgot. Mr. Gable looked at me over the top of his glasses. He knew I was lying. He knew fathers don't forget life or death prescriptions. but he was too professional to call me on it. "Well, I have it ready for you," he said, turning to grab a white paper bag. He placed it on the counter. "The total is $2,850. I fumbled for my debit card, my shaking hand nearly dropping it. Mr. Gable waited with infinite patience. I inserted the card, entered my PIN. I held my breath. Please go through, please go through. If some automatic payment I'd forgotten about had hit, I'd be short. The machine chirped, approved. I exhaled a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Mr. Gable handed me the receipt. "Take one as soon as you get in the car, Naomi. Do you have some water?" "Yes," I managed. "I have a bottle." "Good," he said. "Sit in the car for 20 minutes or so before you drive. Let it start working. Be safe." "Thank you, Mr. Gable," I whispered. I took the bag. It felt weightless, but it was the heaviest thing I'd ever held. Back in the car, I opened it. Inside was a small orange prescription bottle. This was it. This was my value. To my family, this bottle was worth less than a camera. To me, it was worth everything. I twisted the cap, shook out a pill, and swallowed it with a sip of lukewarm water. I leaned my head back against the headrest and closed my eyes. Now I just had to wait. I knew the process. In about 20 minutes, the angry buzzing under my skin would begin to subside. The tremors would quiet. My muscles would unclench. I would feel like myself again. But something fundamental had shifted, something the medicine couldn't touch. I thought about the dining room, about my father's chewing while I pleaded, about my mother's fascination with a rose petal. I wasn't just heartbroken, I was furious. All my life, I had tried to be the good, low-maintenance daughter. I thought if I was quiet enough, helpful enough, they would eventually love me. I realize now that it was a game rigged against me. You can't win love from people who don't have it to give. I looked at the receipt in my hand. New balance, $42.15. I was 28 years old, and I had less than $50 to my name. But I was alive, and I was for the first time seeing my family with perfect, brutal clarity. I looked at the white bag on the passenger seat. "Okay," I said out loud, the words feeling strange in the empty car. The math is simple. Math doesn't lie, but people do. I needed to see the numbers. I started the car. My hands were already beginning to steady. My mind was clear and sharp. I was done being a victim. It was time to find out the truth. I drove to my apartment, a 45-minute journey from my parents' sprawling estate in the suburbs to my cramped one-bedroom in the city. The farther I got from their house, the lighter my chest felt. My apartment was nothing special. It was a walk-up in an old brick building. The pipes clanged, and my only view was the brick wall of the building next door. But it was my sanctuary. It was mine. I climbed the 3 flights of stairs, my legs feeling stronger with each step. The medicine was working. I felt a cold, hard calm settle over me, the feeling of ice forming. I unlocked my door, stepped inside, and threw the deadbolt. Click, the sound of safety. I walked into my small kitchen and placed the pharmacy bag on the counter. I sat down at my small dining table. The apartment was silent. The sun was beginning to set, painting long shadows across the floor. I let myself remember. I usually kept my childhood memories locked away, but tonight, I opened the door. Christmas, age 10. I had begged for a microscope. I wanted to see the hidden world in a drop of water. Under the tree were mountains of gifts for Chloe, who was just a toddler. Dolls, a rocking horse, a closet's worth of tiny dresses. I got a beige cardigan and a book on proper etiquette. "You need to learn to be a lady, Naomi," my father had said. "Science is for boys." Age 16. I was the lead in the school play. I'd practiced for months. On opening night, I scanned the audience for my parents. Their seats were empty. When I got home, my mother was coddling Chloe, who had a scraped knee from the playground. "Where were you?" I'd asked, my stage makeup streaked with sweat. "Chloe had an accident," my mother said, not looking up. "It was just a scrape," I'd said. "I was Titania." "There will be other plays," my father had said, appearing in the doorway. "Your sister needed us. Don't be so selfish." Don't be selfish. That was their favorite weapon. Every time I had a need, I was being dramatic. Every time I had a want, I was being selfish. Every time I succeeded, I was stealing the spotlight from Chloe. So I learned to be the background, the support structure. I thought of our family as a grand old house. Chloe was the chandelier, the art, the polished silverware. Everyone admired her. I was the foundation, the load-bearing walls. I held everything up. No one ever looks at the foundation. They only notice it when it cracks. And at lunch today, I had cracked. I stood up and walked to my laptop. I sat down, opened it, and the screen cast a blue glow on my face. My father, Richard Vance, prided himself on being an old-school businessman. He distrusted the internet, calling it a fad for delinquents. He didn't know how to use a spreadsheet or reset a password. So a few years ago, when his entire financial life moved online, he'd tossed a stack of documents at me. "Just handle this, Naomi," he'd said. "Pay the bills. I don't want to deal with it." He gave me every password, every login, every security question answer. He even gave me digital power of attorney. He assumed I would just quietly do the work forever, because that's what Naomi does. Naomi handles things. I logged into their shared cloud drive. I wasn't just looking for an explanation anymore. I was looking for the truth. He'd said, "We used that money for Chloe's camera." But Richard was a successful real estate consultant, or he was supposed to be. A few $1,000s should have been a rounding error for him. So why did he have to choose? I clicked on the folder labeled Vance Financials. It was time to see what was really inside the house of cards. My heart was pounding, not from my illness, but from adrenaline. I started with the bank statements. I opened the PDF for their primary checking account. I scanned the first page. Beginning balance, $5,100. That was alarmingly low. He usually kept a $50,000 buffer. Then I saw the withdrawals. Golf club dues, $1,500. Luxury car lease, $950. A charge from a high-end department store, $4,200. Chloe's sorority fees, $2,000. It was a gusher of spending. I scrolled to the bottom of the statement. Ending balance, negative $312.78, overdrawn. My parents, who lived in a McMansion, were in the red. I checked the savings account. Balance, $112. It made no sense. My father had an investment portfolio, an inheritance. Where was it? I went to the investments folder. I found a subfolder I didn't create, labeled Project TG. I clicked it. Inside were dozens of emails and wire transfer receipts from 5 years ago. The emails were between my father and a man I'd never heard of. They were giddy, talking about a can't-miss opportunity, the next big thing in green energy, a company called TerraGen. I found an email from my father. "I'm all in, moving the rest of the liquidity from the bond accounts. I want to double this before I retire." I opened the attached wire transfer receipt. Amount, $250,000. I felt nauseous. That was their entire nest egg. That was their emergency fund. I kept digging. I found a letter from a law firm dated 6 months later. Subject: TerraGen bankruptcy and fraud investigation. "We regret to inform you that the assets of TerraGen have been liquidated. It has been determined to be a sophisticated Ponzi scheme. Investor funds are considered a total loss." He lost everything. 5 years ago, my father gambled away their future, and he never told a soul. He just kept up the act. He kept the club membership, leased new cars, bought Chloe designer bags. But how? I went back and opened the credit card statements. There were 6 of them. Card 1, maxed out, $25,000 limit. Card 2, maxed out. Card 3, maxed out. He was kitesurfing debt, using one card's cash advance to make the minimum payment on another. And then I saw it. A transaction from last Friday. On the one card that had a tiny sliver of credit left. A card with a $3,000 limit. There was a single charge. BH photo video, $1,999. The camera. He had just enough credit left to buy Chloe's camera or my medication. He couldn't afford both. If he'd tried to buy my $2,850 prescription, the card would have been declined. He would have been exposed right there in front of the pharmacist. He would have had to admit he was broke. But the camera fit. He didn't just choose Chloe. He chose the option that allowed him to maintain his fantasy of wealth. He chose his ego over my life. A cold, hard rage settled deep in my bones. They were drowning. And instead of selling the house or telling Chloe to get a part-time job, they were using me as a life raft. I kept digging, now fueled by a furious, morbid curiosity. I found he'd taken unauthorized loans against my grandmother's trust, which was supposed to be locked until Chloe turned 25. He'd forged signatures. I found a stack of unpaid property tax notices, scanned and hidden in a folder he'd named Old Receipts. And then I found the darkest secret of all. It was in a folder labeled Insurance. The file was named Life Policy RV4M. It was a $4 million life insurance policy on my father. The beneficiary was my mother. It seemed standard until I saw an attached amendment from 2 years ago. Beneficiary Update Medical Clause Review. I started reading the fine print. I'm a technical writer. I live in fine print. I scrolled to paragraph 7, section C. Policy remains valid provided the insured and all direct dependents maintain a clean bill of health regarding any hereditary genetic conditions. Failure to disclose or treat a diagnosed hereditary condition in a dependent may result in policy voidance. Then I saw it, a saved email draft from my father to his insurance broker. Naomi's diagnosis. If we don't file the claim for this new expensive medication through the main insurance, does it stay off the permanent record? I don't want this to affect the premiums, and we can't risk that clause in the big policy. My blood ran ice cold. My father wasn't just broke, he was banking on his own death as their only way out. This $4 million policy was his golden parachute, and he knew my illness could take it all away. That's why he always insisted on paying cash at the pharmacy. That's why he complained about the cost. He wasn't just being a cheapskate. He was actively hiding my condition from the insurance company. But it was worse. I looked at the dates again. I was diagnosed at 23, 2 years ago. But he had delayed the official filing. I found the emails. He told my specialist we were switching providers and paid out of pocket for the first few crucial months. He waited until just after my 24th birthday, the policy specified diagnosis, before age 24. He had gambled with my long-term health, letting nerve damage accumulate just to make sure the policy was secure. Then I saw the final, unforgivable document. It was from a genetic testing lab. It was an order for Chloe. Status: canceled by client. He knew my condition was hereditary. There was a 50-50 chance Chloe had it too. If she was tested and came back positive, a diagnosis before age 24 was certain. The policy would be void. So he simply canceled her test. He was letting her walk around a ticking time bomb inside her to protect a pile of money he'd only get if he were dead. He was denying me treatment. He was denying her a diagnosis. I closed the laptop. I sat in the darkness of my apartment. I wasn't a daughter who had been neglected. I was evidence in a fraud case. My parents weren't just bad people. They were criminals. And they had made one colossal mistake. They gave the quiet one all the passwords. I stood up, my hand perfectly steady, and picked up my phone. I wasn't going to call them. I scrolled through my contacts, a name I hadn't called in years. "Hello?" A sharp, no-nonsense voice answered. "Aunt Kate," I said. "It's Naomi." "Naomi," she sounded startled. "What's wrong?" "Everything," I said. "I have some files I think you need to see. It's about Dad." There was no surprise in her voice, only a weary resignation. "What did he do this time?" she asked. "He bet the farm," I said, "and he's trying to pay the debt with my health." A beat of silence. "Be in my office in the city tomorrow morning," she said. "Bring every last piece of paper." "I will," I said, and hung up. I looked out my window at the brick wall. It was solid, unyielding. My father thought he was made of brick, that he was untouchable. He forgot that he lived in a glass house, and he had just handed me a stone. I didn't sleep. I spent the night printing. My cheap inkjet printer whirred and groaned, but I printed every last document. Bank statements, credit card bills, the Terrigen emails, the insurance policy, the canceled test for Chloe. I laid it all out on my living room floor, a paper trail of deceit. I saw it all clearly now. He stalled my diagnosis until I was 24, safeguarding his policy. Then, when the money truly ran out 6 months ago, he started forgetting my prescription. He wasn't just being lazy, he couldn't afford it, but admitting that would shatter the illusion. So he let me get sick. He protected his image with my body. He was starving me of medicine and keeping Chloe in the dark about her own potential illness, all for money he'd get when he was dead. Yesterday, I was a victim. Today, I was a prosecutor building my case. I gathered the papers into a neat manila folder. I put on the only suit I owned, a simple black one. I packed a bag, laptop, charger, the folder, my medication. I was going to war, but my weapons were spreadsheets and wire transfer receipts. My father loved the power of paper. Well, now the paper was mine. The train ride to Boston was a blur. I met my Aunt Catherine Kate Sterling in her high-rise office overlooking the harbor. She was my father's older sister, a brilliant financial investigator he'd always dismissed as a soulless vulture. She was angular and sharp where my father was soft and self-indulgent. She didn't hug me. "You look like hell, kid," she said. "I feel like it. Show me." I handed her the folder. She read in silence, her expression hardening with each page. "The idiot," she muttered, seeing the Terrigen files. I warned him about that scheme. When she got to the insurance policy and the email about my diagnosis date, she stopped. She took off her glasses and stared out the window. "He knew," she said, her voice a low growl. "He actively manipulated the timeline of your diagnosis to commit insurance fraud." "He needed the policy," I said, my voice hollow. "He did more than that, Naomi," she said, turning back to me, her eyes blazing. "He shorted you. In my world, that means betting on failure. He was protecting his financial asset by letting you get sicker. You weren't his daughter. You were an acceptable loss." I finally broke, the sobs I'd been holding back shaking my entire body. "He bought her a camera," I wept. "A stupid camera." Kate came around the desk and put a firm, grounding hand on my shoulder. "He is a small, pathetic man, Naomi, and the walls are finally closing in on him." She went back to her desk, pulled out a checkbook, and wrote. She slid a check across the desk. It was for $10,000. "I can't take this," I whispered. "This isn't charity," she commanded. "It's a retainer. You're my client now. You need a safe place to stay, and you need to be strong. We're going to burn it all down. The house, the cars, the reputation. Are you ready to light the match?" I thought of the Sunday lunches, of being told I was dramatic, of my own savings vanishing in an instant. "Yes," I said, my voice clear. "I'm ready." "Good," Kate said, a fierce smile playing on her lips, "because I've been waiting for this day for 30 years. The next Sunday I walked back into that house. "You're back," my mother said, relieved. "Go apologize to your father." "No," I said. "I'm here to conduct an audit." I walked into the study and threw the folder on Richard's desk. "What is this?" he demanded. "That," I said calmly, "is felony insurance fraud, reckless endangerment, and about 5 other kinds of illegal. You didn't just spend my medication money, Dad. You gambled with my life to protect a death benefit." His face went white. "You went through my private things? You gave me the keys to the kingdom, Dad?" I said. "You were too arrogant to learn how to use a computer, so you handed me the evidence." Chloe walked in. "Why is everyone yelling?" "Sit down, Chloe," I said. "It's time you learned the real price of your new camera." "Naomi, stop this," my father pleaded, his voice trembling. He looked small. "It's too late," I said. "Aunt Kate already has copies. Her friends at the State Insurance Board and the IRS are very interested. Oh, and by the way, when the pharmacy flagged a critical medication being repeatedly missed for a patient with a known hereditary condition, it triggered a mandatory wellness check from social services. They'll be contacting you." Eleanor gasped. "And because of this fraud investigation," I said, looking right at Chloe, "the insurance company is now legally required to test you for the gene. If you have it, Dad's $4 million policy is void, and because he hid my diagnosis, you'll likely be uninsurable for life." The silence was a physical thing. Richard stumbled backward. "What gene?" Chloe whispered, her eyes wide with fear. "Dad, what is she talking about?" He couldn't look at her. He had sacrificed both his daughters for a future that would never come. "The glass house is shattered," I said quietly, "and I'm not the one cleaning up the mess this time. It all came apart quickly. The bank foreclosed. The cars were repossessed. My father is under federal investigation. And Chloe? She tested positive. She was furious, but we caught it before any symptoms appeared. She's on preventative medication. She'll be okay. I saved her from my own fate. I live in the city now. My hands are steady. I'm finishing my degree, focusing on accessible design. I'm designing a community center made of reinforced structural glass. It's transparent, but it's also bulletproof. I'm not the invisible girl. I'm not a victim. I'm not a glass child. I told my reflection this morning, I'm the architect. I walked out of the wreckage, and I'm building a life that is truly mine. If you've ever felt invisible and had to fight to be seen, subscribe to this channel and share your story in the comments. You are not alone.